Welcome to 1+1. I'm Kurt Fearnley. My guest today is 2021 Australian of the Year, Grace Tame. When Grace was only 15 years old, she was repeatedly sexually abused by her teacher in a Tasmanian high school. In the aftermath, Grace was prevented by law from sharing her story publicly until, through much campaigning, Grace was able to help change those laws. We caught up in Mona in Hobart to talk about grit, determination, and her love of art. So we're going to see the little wheelchair.
It's so funny, I wouldn't have thought of that at all.
Are you a sculpture person?
I mean, I like sculptures, but I don't really make sculptures.
You don't make it.
Do you make art?
Me? I'm not the most artistic person going around.
But
there are some things that I love. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here, though.
Oh, me neither.
I see a wheelchair in that one.
There you go.
The little wheel at the front.
Are you projecting, Kurt?
I am completely projecting. So what sort of art do you create? Do you do?
Sort of surreal or photoreal illustration type of work. I prefer working with pencil, graphite and coloured pencil. There was one piece that I was working on for Martin Gore, and I remember a couple of days where I was working for like 17 hours straight because I was so engrossed in the detail. I'd totally lose perspective, and I'd get up and I'd walk into a door because my depth perception and my whole perspective, everything was just completely, warped.
It's intense.
It is, it's intense. It's that hyper focus,
Yeah.
Arguably not healthy at all.
It can be really creative and can allow you to create things that others can't. Grace Tame, welcome to 1+1. You're a keen artist. Were you always a creative kid?
I was always doing something. I was always doodling and sketching, and my mum's really creative and she always encouraged me to, explore that side of myself. I have fond memories of growing up and doing various different projects, making cards and screen printing, making our own stencils and that sort of thing. And I always loved to draw, different characters and sketch faces and that sort of thing.
You did get to tour the US with John Cleese.
I did do that.
How does something like that take place?
Well, so I was living in the US. I moved there when I was 18. I just turned 18. I was studying there for a couple of years at a community college. I was studying liberal arts and film, theatre arts, screenwriting, that kind of thing. And in my last semester there, I went down to LA with a friend of mine, and we went to an art gallery. And I took a picture, or my friend took a picture of me sitting outside the gallery on a bench, and I tagged the gallery Instagram handle in the post, and the gallery owner must have seen it and then looked through my Instagram profile, which included some of my sketches, because it's something I've always done as a hobby. He then offered me a solo show in his space. He asked if I wanted to pull a collection of drawings together and show them, and I said, yeah, why not? So I did that, and off of that I got more requests from individuals, more commissions. At this point I'd already met John Cleese's daughter, a lovely, lovely human being by the name of Camilla. And her and I, when we met, we hit it off instantly and sort of became friends. So Camilla asked me if I wanted to do something for her dad. Originally it was just going to be a personal present, and we wanted to do something that included John's cats. So John is a big fan of cats, and he has, I think, 4 or maybe 5 now Maine Coons, you know, the really big ones.
Yeah,
that are like,
that are part wild.
Yeah, that are part wild, and they're huge.
Yeah.
They're like 5 kilos or something like that. So we thought it would be funny to send up a piece of high art, like, and then I thought, well, if we're going for high art, like what's bigger than the Last Supper kind of thing.
So you were a fan of...
Yeah. I mean, I'd grown up. My dad introduced me to Fawlty Towers when I was about 6 years old. I think it was actually Mum that showed me the Holy Grail when I was about 8 years old. But then...
The Black Knight. The Black Knight. When everything's taken away and he's still yelling, come back here and I'll bite your legs.
I'll bite your legs off. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's one of the great scenes. Yeah, and it's really funny. It's really surreal, just how much of a full circle. Because when I dropped out of school after I reported the abuse to police, there was a period of time where I was just sitting at home. I was in bed, and I didn't actually leave bed, I don't think, for a couple of weeks. I just sat there, and my cat sat on the end of my bed, and I just watched reruns of Monty Python just to soothe me. But for me, it was comfort, entertainment. It was just pure escapism. And I would sit there and I would draw. And one of the things that my mum said to me one day, just to humour me, she said, "Oh, one day maybe you'll draw for one of the pythons." And I did. That's wild.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah.
When you were, you're loving Monty Python as a kid, artistic, were you athletic as well? Were you sporty?
Yeah, I was into everything. I just was a ball of energy. And I'm still that way, like I'm a glass half full person, even on the worst of days, And so, I was engaged in all kinds of different sports and stuff, from cross country to, I played soccer. I was the only girl on the primary school soccer team from grade 3 to grade 6. And
were you academic as well? Did you?
I gave it a crack. Yeah.
You gave everything a crack.
I gave everything a bloody good crack. I guess I did quite well academically. Yeah, I just did a bit of everything. I gave everything 110%.
You've spoken about your struggles with anorexia.
Yeah.
How did that kind of present itself in your life?
So it's hard to say because it's not really a linear thing, and it certainly didn't just pop up out of nowhere. I think that it stems from a few different things. For me, when I get stressed, I lose my appetite. Physically, I find it hard to eat. I was also abused as a child. I was molested as a 6-year-old by an older child, and that affected the way that I perceived my body. And I was diagnosed when I was 20, I think, high functioning autistic. And so, organisation and control, and I've got obsessive tendencies.
How did that land on you? When you're sitting down and you're identifying parts of yourself.
It certainly makes a lot of sense. Certain areas are, for me, heightened. Certain behaviours are heightened, and then others I feel like a disconnect around. I'm really bad at telling when people have an ulterior motive. I often don't pick up on subtle, nuanced social behaviours. But on the other side of that, with the obsessive sort of perfectionism, I think that played into the anorexia a lot. The control, and when it really reared its head was in my early teens, about 12, 13. Like any obsession, it's kind of insidious and snowballs before you're really aware that it's taken over.
So when you were 15 and you were vulnerable, you were taken advantage of or preyed upon at that point in time, and you're asked to speak about that so frequently. How do you get through those conversations? How do you kind of steel yourself for that?
I lean into the incredible amount of unconditional love that I am very blessed to have around me. As far as survivors of child sexual abuse go, I'm amongst the luckiest purely because I was believed immediately, and purely because although the abuse is very isolating and alienating as by design of predators, my family never left my side. And so I'll often have a family member with me in the background on site who's there with me. My partner Max is incredible. He shows up to everything and he's there. I joke that I need to get him like a little guide dog vest that says don't pat me, I'm on duty. That's how I get through it. And also, to me, this is as draining as I have to be honest that it is. As draining and challenging as it is, it's so worth it. Even if it's just for one person's benefit, I would do it 100 times over. And while I have all this support around me to enable me to do it, I think I have a responsibility to do it, because there are a lot of other people who are survivors of this who don't have that, and they're just focused on surviving. And so if I've got the energy and the ability to do it, I will.
You've also spoken about trauma and the impact of trauma on someone's life.
Yeah.
How does that present itself into day-to-day life?
Oh, gosh. Again, that's not a linear thing. It's so hard to compartmentalise and tease apart, which is why it's so important that we talk about it. Because I think where a lot of people go wrong who haven't had a first-hand experience of trauma is that they think that it can be contained. I liken it to a cold sore. I say it's like an emotional or mental cold sore, in that it's with you forever and it can lie dormant within you, but at any given time it can be triggered, and that's not your fault. No one wakes up and goes, grow me a cold sore today. It just happens, and you can deal with it, and you can take active measures to stop it from coming up as frequently. You can manage it, but it's there, and you have to accept that. But that doesn't mean it defines you either. And it doesn't mean that it's a negative thing. Like in my case, I see it as a source of great strength and resilience and ultimately power.
The strength it required for you when you were able to speak, where did that strength come from?
It came from anger. So a very interesting thing happened when I was 16, because throughout the abuse I had been very submissive. I had not stood up to this man. So the abuse stopped at the end of 2010, at the end of the school year. But then into 2011, when I came back to school, he continued to stalk me. So he was turning up outside of my house and in his car at night time, like 9 p.m, 10 p.m. at night, and sitting out there. And I was going insane. I felt like I was losing my mind. I'd already cut myself throughout the abuse, and I was turning up to school with a flask of my stepdad's spirits in my blazer, and just was off the show. And I just felt this mounting rage, this boiling rage inside of me. But what happened was that fear that I had was surpassed by the rage. And I remember walking past this man in the school courtyard. I saw him, I flipped in the bird, and because he had a number of fake Facebook profiles throughout the abuse to keep track of me and communicate with me, he sent me a message that evening, and he said, "Oh, why did you give me the finger today at school?" And I said, "I don't want to speak to you. I'll no doubt see you tomorrow at school." And I went into school the next day, and I went into his office, and I don't know if you've ever been blind with rage. have you ever just seen red and not been able to...
Maybe on the...
Felt like you were possessed?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It scares me to actually think about.
Yeah, it is. It's terrifying. I mean, I was terrified for myself in that moment because I was just filled with rage. Every fibre of my being felt like it was burning. And I remember standing, he was sitting down in his office chair, and the abuse had taken place predominantly in his office on the floor. And I was standing there in his office. He was sitting at his desk chair, smug, arrogant, staring at me, just no emotion, and I just flew off the handle. And it was just, like I said, you're a monster, I hate you for what you've done to me, I hate you for what you've done to my family. And I pointed to a picture of one of his children and I said, the only reason I'm not saying anything is because I don't want to hurt your family and I don't want to hurt my family anymore. Like you've hurt me. And I told him I hoped you burned in hell. And I left. And, you know, once that rage had then passed through me and reality sunk back in, I threw up. And I remember running off campus and I just kept running. I ran all through town. I ran down Macquarie Street and I ran to the bus mall and I got on the bus and I went home. And I was, you know, like I said, reality hit and I went, oh my God, he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me. And then I went, I have to tell someone. This isn't a safe place for anybody. And I've always been just innately driven by a want to make sure that other people are okay. Put people at ease, protect them, look out for them, look after them. And so I knew that I had to do something.
What does the process of speaking out, though, have on that? When you were able to speak out and
then the power
disclose,
comes back to you. Yeah, then you can reconnect with yourself.
Did you feel that?
Yeah, I did. I felt like, you know, because abuse is characterised by a loss of control and power, like I've just been talking about. And so to have that back, to have your voice, because that's, you know, that's how we connect with other people. You know, as human beings, that's what we crave. We crave connection, we crave love and interaction. And so to be able to speak again was you know, one of the missing pieces in the healing journey.
Tell me about the Let Her Speak campaign.
So the Let Her Speak campaign was created by an incredible journalist by the name of Nina Fennell. She has done amazing work in this space. She's actually a survivor herself. She's a dear friend of mine. She's just had a baby. Anyway, she started the campaign after her and I connected. And I want to give some context around that because there are lots of layers of injustice in my case that speak to the complexities of the psychological manipulation that extends beyond the physical abuse. You know, perpetrators continue to manipulate everyone forever if they're able to. So after he was released from prison, the teacher that abused me applied for a federally funded scholarship to study at UTAS, which is the only university here in Tassie. He was awarded that scholarship to study his PhD. And he was also put into student accommodation with 17 and 18-year-old fresh undergraduates. And then in 2015, during his PhD tenure, he went online, he went on Facebook, and in a public discussion, he made very degrading comments towards me. He said what he got to do was awesome. To abuse a 15-year-old girl, it was enviable. He said he was one of the most envied men in Australia. And initially, right after these comments were made by him on Facebook, and because the internet is still a very lawless place, his comments didn't constitute grounds for a criminal conviction. But my mother, who then took it upon herself to pursue a conviction, and she was successful. And in fact, we set a national precedent. And on the back of that, I was put in touch with Nina Fennell. And we were going to talk about all of these layers of injustice. Then right before we were about to share all of these details that Nina and I had been working on, we discovered, or Nina's attention was drawn to this law, Section 194K of Tasmania's Evidence Act, that prevented survivors of child sexual abuse from identifying in the media, even after they turned 18 and even with their consent. And so she dreamed up this campaign. She'd had successful campaigns in the past, and she just went, let's make some noise about it.
And that campaign was successful?
Yes.
What impact of being able to speak under your own name, your own identity, what impact does that have on you?
Oh, it's hard to distill, I suppose, but it is. It's a return of power. It's a return of your sense of self. Ownership of your own narrative, which should be a given. It's a right that we should have to be able to speak about our own experience on our own terms and educate others, because that's what I really wanted to do. That was my motivation all along from day one. That was what drove me to talk to the police, was because I wanted to protect and help other people.
It's been a massive year for
Yes, and it's only March, Kurt.
I know. What? March was a decade ago. But it has been a massive year around, especially around these types of issues. We've had Brittany Higgins speak out. We've had protests across the country. Are we as a society at a turning point?
Yes. Oh, yes. We're past the turning point. That's what excites me and fills me with so much hope. Often when an issue that's been for so long shrouded in darkness is suddenly thrust into the spotlight, there's widespread shock and disbelief at how it could happen and happen so ubiquitously. And what we need to do is be really careful not to focus on the negativity. So it's not just hearing the confronting details, which we need. They serve a purpose in inciting, passion and drive to want to do something. But then from there, we need to focus on the next step, which is the education that comes from it.
The Australian of the Year Awards. So I've been in that room. I find that room terrifying. That was...
fucking shit.
It is
terrifying.
The Prime Minister's there.
He's just a person, though.
But the media that follow that are also there.
Oh, yes.
They're
always there.
That moment...
Sneaky. I see you.
That moment when they called your name, what emotions go through you there?
I think it would be easier to answer the question of what emotions don't go through you in that moment. I was there, first and foremost, as a representative on behalf of a community of people who have been stigmatised and shamed for so long. So to be awarded Australian of the Year as a survivor of child sexual abuse, that to me is the most hopeful symbol that I could think of for change.
I saw your speech at the Women's Day March. That speech was powerful. You bring people together.
Keep on listening, keep on learning, but always keep on loving. Tassie, you bloody rock!
But you know what gave me that power? I was absolutely whacked. In the space of 9 days, I did 4 30-minute keynote addresses in 3 different cities across Australia, and media on top of that, television, radio, podcasts, film shoots, all of the above and more. And it was actually the first time that I've spoken in Tasmania since being named Australian of the Year. And I wanted to do it, and my manager was saying, have a day off, and I went, no, this is so important. This is so important. I'll put that to one side. And I turned up and I was, trying to keep my eyes open. And because I'm so oblivious and I don't think of myself as, I don't walk around going, I'm Australian of the Year. I'm just me. I'm just little old, silly old me. And it's often not until people come up to me and they ask me, are you Grace? That I go, oh, shit, yeah. So I spoke last and they said, you know, here's the Australian, the next guest is the Australian of the Year. And she didn't even say my name. And the crowd just went wild. And the energy and the love that just I felt just wash over me and well, through me was electrifying. And I got up there and suddenly I felt like I was rocket fuel channeling through me. And I just went, you know, Tasmania, like, and it was incredible because it did start here. Because of the law change happening here, that's what actually started this conversation in little old Tasmania.
The first domino.
The first domino was us. And so, yeah, looking out into the crowd and it was love. It was just love. And I was giving it back and it was just this holy regenerative thing of just, you know, love, and it was so empowering. And so I didn't have any notes. I didn't have a speech written down. I just went up there and I spoke from the heart. It came from them though. It came from us. It came from and that's what love is. Love does that.
You've spent so much of your recent time advocating for survivors. Yeah. How do you switch off? What do you do for you?
You don't.
You don't? Not at the moment.
I go home and you know, plug myself into the wall and lie down and recharge. No, I mean, I live and breathe this stuff, and I do it with passion, and I do it with, you know, like just it's unconditional for me.
Not running?
Running does. Running's a part of it. Running does, I guess, enable me to do it because it grounds you, you know.
I spoke to Josh about who you are as a runner, your coach.
He's a weapon. I love Josh.
He says one thing about you, and that is there are no limits.
No.
What do you love about marathoning?
So many things. I've only actually run. I've raced officially. I've only raced one marathon.
And one win.
Yeah, but it wasn't. Look, it wasn't. It was the Ross Marathon. Okay, it wasn't Boston. It wasn't a particularly competitive marathon.
It was a sub 3 hour marathon in your very first run.
Yeah.
There is a strength there that he said you also ran from the start and led the first kilometre as well.
Yeah, because I got a bit excited. I was up there with the boys.
But you held on to do such a great time. Like, that is an amazing time.
It was all mental. Physically, I'd given up. So I was dropping off the pace, and there was a group of guys who'd maintained a sub 3 hour pace for the whole race, you know, and they'd done it very strategically. And so eventually they caught up with me. And this was 10 years. Last year was the 10-year anniversary of the abuse for me. So when I was running the marathon, this was 10 years after the abuse, and 10 years before that, if I had been walled in by a group of men, I would have been absolutely terrified. But I was walled in by this group of men, and they knew that it was little old me, you know, I'm 5'4", and these big guys, and they just gave love and support, and that was beautiful. That was incredible.
Obviously, I think 2021 is going to be a hurricane. It's going to be a pretty busy year for you.
Oh, it's already a hurricane.
What does life look like after 2021? What does life look like going into the future?
If I had a crystal ball, Kurt, I'd be able to tell you. I don't know, but I have high hopes that this conversation won't die down, you know, and whether I am still this much a part of it or not, that's okay, because my life always has been and always will be my family. I want to start my own family with my partner Max, and yeah.
Well, whatever it is, I do wish you the best. And
thank you.
Thanks for joining me on 1+1.
No worries. It's been an absolute pleasure.